Greetings, buzz humans, smarks, marks, hipsters, and trolls, buzz rats, and the rest of the irrelevant Rasslin family. It's me, your host and humble narrator for this evening's main event. That's right, it's Joe Fortune back with another relevant review. Buzz humans, the voice of Relevant Wrestling Productions is here on, and I must ask you, are you relevant? Are you buzzworthy? Are you adequately prepared to join me, Joe Fortune, for another relevant wrestling review? Buzz humans, we've been doing these reviews for about a week and a half now. I'm going to keep pumping them out for you. Try to get them out on a more consistent basis. I apologize for, doing these big drops of like 4 or 5 reviews at a time. Trying to do a review at least every other day. Doing one every day would just be impossible, especially with the 3 podcasts that we do monthly. And I'm looking also to add a 4th monthly podcast to our podcasting schedule. I have an idea for a new podcast. I will debut that idea later in another relevant review. So you're going to have to pay attention, buzz humans, if you're even out there watching this, but I know that you are. So yeah, we're going to try to do 4 different podcasts a month, and, keep doing the relevant reviews in between, work on everything else with, Wrestle Party and the zines and shit that we do, and just keep it locked to Relevant Wrestling, buzz humans. Like I said, this is another relevant review. This is your host and humble narrator, Joe Fortune. Let's get right into it, buzz humans. This time we are going to be reviewing a WWE documentary, actually the most recent WWE documentary, which was released this past Saturday night, right after the NXT UK pay-per-view. So it might have been Saturday afternoon for us here in the States. But yeah, that was on Saturday the 12th that this was released. If you don't already know what I'm talking about, buzz humans, I'm talking about the Nigel McGuinness documentary, Chasing the Magic, the Nigel McGuinness story. Now, buzz humans, this is a great documentary. Like I said, one of the best from the WWE, and actually the most relatable, since I followed Nigel McGuinness for years. I followed this guy's career since his very first match in Ring of Honor, probably back in 2003 or 4, I want to say, maybe 2004, or early 2005. But yeah, it's 2019 now, and I've been following this dude for 14 years. You know, a little less than half my life. I'm 32 now, so I will be 32 in like 2 fucking weeks. Remind yourselves of that. February 1st. Send me shit. Anyway, this is not about me. This is about the man, Nigel McGuinness. And I'm not the only one who thinks that he's the fucking man, because this documentary starts out with clips from guys like AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, Kurt Angle, and Samoa Joe. And they're all putting over how great that this dude was, how very well respected that this dude was by his peers. And basically how, McGuinness was considered the best technical wrestler on the independent scene, maybe even in America and in Japan overall in the world. I guess people did consider Nigel the best technical wrestler in the world, and especially at the height of his run when he was in Ring of Honor. He had some amazing matches. You know, I'll tell you what the match is later. That's my favorite match ever, favorite live match that I've ever seen in person, I've ever been able to experience, featured Nigel McGuinness. So that's just been a match that I've held with me for a long time. And I always tell people I loved Samoa Joe versus Kobashi. That was one of my favorite live matches. But the best live match I've ever seen live was a Nigel McGuinness match. And I'll tell you guys what match that is at the end of this review. So the documentary, like I said, starts out with everybody putting this dude over. And then we see Nigel getting ready for the UK tournament at Royal Albert Hall. He went there when he was young and he saw WWE. And he can't believe now he's going to finally get to be a part of an event at this historic arena. So Nigel was a fan since he was a kid. After a friend of his showed him an old WWF tape, which was actually SummerSlam 1990. Now, Nigel and that same friend were lucky enough to get tickets to SummerSlam 1992, which was held at Wembley Stadium. So Nigel started wrestling. You know, he knew from a young age that that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get into wrestling, but he knew he was going to go to college and he had to get, you know, over to America, and he needed to go to a good wrestling school. But he was no dummy. He studied his tapes. He knew who was, you know, one of the best trainers around, and that was Les Thatcher. So when Nigel came to school here in America for college, he actually started training with Les Thatcher. So we see a lot of footage on this documentary from Ring of Honor. It talks about Nigel McGuinness's Pure title run. If you guys aren't familiar with what the Ring of Honor Pure title was a concept that Samoa Joe and Gabe Sapolsky came up with to kind of bring wrestling back to its roots, more mat-based, technical, submission-style wrestling. In Pure Wrestling rules matches, there were, you know, each contestant got 3 rope breaks. That was it. If they used all 3 rope breaks throughout the match, then their opponent did not have to break the hold if they were, you know, in the ropes or had their foot under the rope or whatever. They did not have to let go or relinquish their hold, no matter what. Also, in the Pure title match, there was no, I think there was like a strict 20 count on the outside of the ring. Might have even been a 10 count. Also, you know, anything that the ref deemed as like sneaky or cheap, like closed fists especially, that would actually cost you 1 rope break. So you don't want to lose your rope breaks before you even get a chance to really use them. So very strategic, mat-based technical wrestling. And Samoa Joe carried that title for a while. I think Jay Lethal did as well. I actually think Jay Lethal had that title first, then Samoa Joe beat him for it. And then ultimately it was Nigel who beat Joe for that title. So, yeah, a lot of history right there between Nigel and Joe. And, you know, you see Joe on the SmackDown main roster now. But, you know, where's Nigel? He's an announcer. So why is he an announcer if he loves wrestling so much and he started out as a wrestler? Well, you know, we see more of his Ring of Honor run. And he finally has this unification match with Daniel Bryan, who at the time was Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon. And they were having a unification match, like I said, for the Ring of Honor World title and for the Pure title. I don't know why they got rid of the Pure title. I think it was awesome, and I still wish that they had that title around. But they had this match in England. It was a brutal, brutal match. It looked like Nigel was going to win, and then Bryan had just put him in some sort of a hold, like a crucifix hold, and he started wailing on Nigel in the head with elbows. And, I mean, he lost by KO. You know, you don't normally see a finish like that in wrestling, and especially in, like, indie wrestling at the time. That was pretty major. So I thought that was really cool when Bryan started doing the mixed martial arts stuff and actually winning by knockouts. And, you know, of course, like, since that match was in England, the crowd was crushed. They could not believe that Bryan won. But at the end of the night, when, you know, Nigel stood up to make his way out of the ring, there wasn't a single person in that arena who was not on their feet cheering for him. And, you know, that is a prime example, you guys, Buzz Humans, of like when somebody can be elevated by losing. That is beautiful booking right there, and that's an art that I feel like is really lost nowadays. So you take a guy who's a mid-carder like a Nigel McGuinness, right? And you want to bring him up. He's already got that mid-card belt. So I understand they want to get rid of that belt. But you want to prep this guy to have, you know, move from the mid-card to the upper mid-card, getting ready to get in that main event spot if he becomes a champion. So that is, like I said, a beautiful example of superb booking strategy. Okay, you elevate this mid-card guy, by having him go toe to toe with the main champion, the main eventer, you know, your main heel. And or maybe at the time Bryan was a baby, but the way he won was heelish. So you're doing a turn right there by putting your champion over, protecting him, you know, by winning with a knockout victory. So not necessarily a cheap victory, but not necessarily, you know, a clean victory either. And you're the beautiful part of it that I keep stressing is you have elevated this mid-card guy now to upper mid-card, almost main event status, by losing just because he put on such a valiant fight, a valiant effort. And like I said, that's like booking that you just really don't see anymore. You know, WWE likes to cool guys down a lot. Once they start to get hot, they have a hard time elevating people. Like people either debut as main eventers or they're jobbers. It's very hard. If you're caught in the mid-card, you're caught in the mid-card. But regardless, let's get back to this review and talk about Nigel. So there's like a cool scene where we learn that, you know, Nigel does card tricks, and that's how he meets new people backstage. That's how he, you know, shows his personality off to other people, how he meets new wrestlers, how he interacts with fans, families of wrestlers, other talent and things like that. So that was pretty cool. So finally, this dude Nigel became the Ring of Honor champion. He beat, I don't think they mentioned this, but the guy that he beat was Takeshi Morishima. He was a big bastard from Japan who ran through dudes. He had epic feuds with Daniel Bryan and Homicide, I believe is who he took the title from. But again, like that is how you build this guy. Nigel was at that mid-card level. They had another heel champion come and beat Bryan. And then what did Nigel do? He slayed the beast. He became the champion. And for over 500 days, he was the Ring of Honor champion. Now, injuries and concussions piled up because Nigel was working a very stiff, you know, Japanese strong style wrestling. But also he was doing lots of submissions and power moves and just an all-around, you know, very brutal and very demanding style. You know, Nigel always went hard, balls to the wall, smash mouth wrestling, we call it. So, you know, the concussions were piling up, and finally he gets the offer from WWE. They had put, you know, their applications in, and him and Daniel Bryan got the call at the same time. He was signed a contract for the WWE at the same time as Daniel Bryan. But here's the thing. Daniel Bryan lied on his application. He said he had no injuries, no concussions, nothing like that. And obviously we know in the long run how that came to bite Daniel Bryan in the ass. He lost nearly 3 years of his career due to, you know, severe concussions. So Nigel did not lie on his application. He said that he had a torn bicep, and therefore he did not pass the physical exam due to that. You know, he waited for it to heal and scar over because he had no money for surgery. And he was just waiting, pushing, hoping that if he let the wound heal, you know, he let the muscle scar over, his bicep would be okay. He pushed himself. He trained. He did what he had to do. And he thought that this was it. He got cleared by a local doctor who was like a hockey doctor, a doctor for a hockey league. I don't know if it was NHL or a local team, but he was you know, he cleared him. But unfortunately, Nigel did not get cleared by the WWE. They still would not clear him because of his injury. And this really sucked for him because Daniel Bryan and him were like best buds at the time, worked a lot of great matches together in Ring of Honor, but Bryan got signed and Nigel did not. You know, even though Daniel Bryan said at the time he didn't really want to be in WWE, but he knew he needed a serious source of income. And he needed to improve his lifestyle. He couldn't just be working these indie matches week in and week out and just not cutting the mustard, paying the bills. But he says Nigel definitely wanted to be there, and Nigel's goal always was to do whatever it took to get noticed and get himself into the WWE. And unfortunately, guys, you know, Buzz Heumanns, he didn't. He did not get he didn't get in. 18 months he waited for his arm to heal, and they still would not clear him. So he did the next best thing, and he still wanted to be on TV. He still was trying to get noticed by WWE, show them that he had that drive, that determination. So what did he do, Buzz Humans? This dude, Nigel, called TNA. A week later, he was on TNA Impact or whatever it was called at the time. I'm pretty sure it was TNA Impact back then. And this guy's put on a classic match against Kurt Angle, blowing Kurt Angle away. They never worked together before, obviously. They called it all in the ring, and Kurt said that this is one of his favorite matches that he'd ever have. So Nigel started his run in Impact Wrestling, TNA, and he found out shortly thereafter that he had tested positive for the hepatitis B virus. Now, that virus should have been gone with medication and treatment in 90 days, but 10% of the population who gets Hep B does not get it cleared after 90 days. And unfortunately, Nigel wound up being in that 10%. So he still had the hepatitis. And this guy, like I said before, he had no money for surgery for his arm. So he really had no surgery. I mean, no money for medication and treatments for his hepatitis B. So he did some research. He found a doctor who had an experimental drug, and he actually tried it. And lo and behold, Buzz Humans, this shit cleared Nigel of his sickness. But unfortunately, and I don't think this was due to anything he did, this is probably due to financial issues, politics and what have you. I'm not really sure. They didn't go into detail, but Nigel was released by TNA. So he was pretty screwed at that point, or feeling like he was screwed. He didn't make it to WWE. He was sick with the hepatitis, still trying to get cleared for his arm, and he just lost his job with TNA. So he realized that he needed arm surgery, or he would never go back, never be able to go to the WWE. He still had no money, and he knew like he could not go back to wrestling the Ring of Honor style, because that was how he got injured in the first place. So Nigel decided it was time to announce his retirement tour. I believe it was like 15 dates all over the world, and he hoped that if he filmed it and made a documentary about it, which he did, as a separate documentary from that, it is not this one, that someone from the WWE would see him. They would see the documentary. They would understand and respect his hustle, his willingness to ride those buzz waves, try to make buzz for himself, and get himself over organically on the independent scene. And he hoped that he'd get that call finally from WWE. So, as luck would have it, as fate would have it, the very same night that Nigel McGuinness had his last match in England, and it was only in front of 150 people. Okay, Buzz Humans, he gets a call, or he gets a text from Daniel Bryan, and Bryan has just cashed in his Money in the Bank, winning the world title for the first time from the Big Show. Nigel's crushed because, that was his dream. He wanted to be there, be in the WWE. He wanted to win the world title. He wanted more than Bryan. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And, Bryan, being the humble dude that he is, and still having, having love and respect for his friend Nigel, he texted him and told him that he had won the world title. And he said that he wishes that Nigel had won that title that night, or that Nigel was there with him, or, they could celebrate this together because of how far they had come and how much work they put in the years on the indie scene. So Nigel, he knew that was it for him with wrestling. And that was it. He retired. So shortly thereafter, he started to work for Ring of Honor once again. They gave him a job as a commentator. And, finally he gets this phone call from Michael Cole, because guys like Seth Rollins and Kurt Angle were buzzing in Cole's ear saying, you got to check this guy out. You got to check this guy out. Nigel's the real deal. He's a wrestler. He's one of the best wrestlers, and he knows a shitload about wrestling, and he's passionate as fuck. So he got the call from Michael Cole, and finally Nigel had made it. He made it to the WWE, guys. He was offered a contract with NXT first to be an announcer. And then he was the announcer for 205 Live. I think he's on there sometimes. He's on UK doing pay-per-views. He got it, guys. You know, Cole thought that this would be great for Nigel, and also was really psyched because he knew he could have Nigel be the lead announcer and commentary interview dude too for the UK brand that they were going to be working on and launching, and the tournaments and you know, NXT UK. So look how it turned out for him, right? So we get Brian commenting about how must have been hard for Nigel, you know, how it must be hard for Nigel to go out there and commentate every night knowing that he wants to wrestle, but how he sees how happy that Nigel is now. Nigel also mentioned, this is something I thought that was really cool. He mentions how he loves seeing like new wrestlers, new workers using the moves that he created and that he used to do. And like guys like Joe and Cesaro say that Nigel as an announcer is a great fit. It's a perfect role for him because he has so much experience as a wrestler and so much knowledge about the scene, you know, the independent scene and the international scene. You know, and personally, I always feel like the best announcers, the best people in the booth, all right, besides maybe like there's a few exceptions, you know, like JR and Vince McMahon, even though he eventually wrestled, and you know, maybe Don West. I don't know if he wrestled or not, but he worked as, you know, manager before. My point is, like, I always feel like ex wrestlers make the best commentators, the best announcers. You know, Jerry Lawler, Jesse the Body, Gorilla Monsoon, you know, just to name a few. But yeah, awesome. You know, Nigel, he took a very interesting road, interesting path to get to the WWE. Was not necessarily what he had planned or expected, but fuck, he made it, Buzz Humans. He rode the buzzwaves out. He never gave up on himself. And he was able to call a match with, what's the guy's name? Vic Joseph, I think, at WrestleMania 34, he was able to call a cruiserweight match, 205 Live match. So this documentary ends with a really cool video package of a bunch of current footage of Nigel announcing from, you know, NXT and UK and 205 Live. Buzz Humans, you know, you guys know that I love my documentaries, especially wrestling ones or wrestling related ones. So this was really no different for me. Whoops. Plus, it was a guy who I respect greatly, who I followed with since his, you know, who I followed since his ROH debut, who I've actually shared meals with, car rides with. Surprisingly, you guys wouldn't believe it, but I have, just due to like mutual friends in the wrestling, not in the wrestling business, but you know, Nigel's a really good friend with my buddy Greg H, who hooks everybody up with the, you know, good deals on tickets, and just is a huge wrestling fan, and very good and very kind to the wrestlers themselves. Nigel has always been a good friend of his, and you know, I don't have a one bad word to say about the dude. Never a bad personal experience with him. Always had a great sense of humor. Always very, you know, always a student of the game. You know, something you would always see Nigel McGuinness doing would be coming out during matches and sitting in the way back in the crowd, like in the general admission section, or kind of standing near the curtain watching, studying, watching all the matches. Like, Nigel truly was a student of the game and a master. He became a master of technical wrestling. You know, one of the best ever technical guys from the independent scene to never have made it to WWE as a performer, an in-ring performer. Like I said, I met this guy years ago. He was always funny and outgoing. I would love to have this dude's job, you know, as a commentator for a specific brand, represent my culture, represent my my history, represent myself. You know, it is a perfect fit for him. This is a great story. I loved all the ROH footage and history. I got a new respect for Michael Cole, you know, since he hired Nigel. And this one addressed the hard shit. Like for a lot of years, Nigel wouldn't talk about the hepatitis B thing. And there were even some points in time where he denied it and said it was a neck injury that kept, was keeping him from wrestling. But, I'm glad he addressed everything in this one. This ended on a really positive note. There are other documentaries that are, kind of sad. But this was a great one. And, I'm happy that I got to watch it and review it for you BuzzHumans on this relevant review. So with that said, BuzzHumans, this is Joe Fortune, the voice of Relevant Rasslin Productions, representing False Finish Productions and Relevant Rasslin Productions. So BuzzHumans, with that said, we are proud to be part of the False Finish family. And please make sure to check out all of our social media so you can ride the buzzwaves with us. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Hear us all over podcasting platforms, Podbean, iTunes, Spotify. We're out there, BuzzHumans. Make sure to check out falsefinish.com and hit up the link in our bio so you can visit our Buzz Shop page and pick up a zine or a print, our WrestleMania 35 week planner. And I got to update this and add some dates to it. But our Northeast Indie Wrestling Calendar, BuzzHumans, we do the work so you don't have to, keeping you relevant and buzzworthy in the professional and independent wrestling scene. With that said, BuzzHumans, this has been Joe Fortune with another Relevant Wrestling review. This time we reviewed Chasing the Magic, the Nigel McGuinness story. And with that said, BuzzHumans, whew. Kayfabe may be dead, but originality and diversity are not. For Relevant Wrestling Productions and False Finish Productions, it's always relevant to us. Damn it. Peace.